to Digit Debates. We're very pleased to have so many people attend our first one of 2025 in Digit 2. And I'm very pleased today as well to welcome our colleagues from the union movement and from Digit to present their Uni Europe funded project on AI handbook for working in retail. Retail is a sector that the centre has spent quite a bit of time on, and there's a number of researchers, some of who are here today, who've worked on issues around recruitment, warehousing, Q-commerce, and a number of issues. So this is a really important topic because our advisors at the TUC said we need something that we can actually take out to help our union negotiators and shop floor stewards to help actually negotiate how these technologies have been implemented. So I hope you're going to enjoy the presentation today. Just to make sure everybody has enough time, I will not introduce the discussants yet. We'll do that after the presentation from Will Hunt and Steve Rolf, and Rachel sends her apologies because she couldn't be here today. So looking forward to hearing the results from your report, Steve and Will.
There we go. Seamless. Thanks for that introduction, Jackie. And thanks everyone for logging in to give us an opportunity to tell you about our research that we've been doing. So as Jackie mentioned, so this is based on a project that Rachel, Steve and I worked on in order to sort of produce this handbook for Uni Europa. And basically the idea was this would be a resource and a guide that union reps could use to try and understand what kind of technologies were being used and what some of the issues might be, particularly in the UK and Europe. So basically, yeah, Uni Europa wanted us to investigate what kinds of AI-enabled technology were being used in the retail sector, quite broadly defined to include kind of retail shops and also warehousing and that kind of thing. And basically, they wanted us to look at what the potential risks and opportunities were that are associated with these technologies and what unions can and in some cases already are doing about in response to these kinds of technologies. So before I sort of say too much about the kind of technologies that we kind of came across and what people are doing, I think it's worth saying a little bit about what we mean by AI, how we're defining it, and why this is so potentially important. So first of all, we use the OECD definition of artificial intelligence to kind of guide what kinds of technologies we were interested in. And the OECD definition defines AI as being basically a machine-based system that produces outputs based on inputs with varying degrees of autonomy and adaptiveness. And in order to sort of help union reps to try to sort of think about what kinds of technologies that might be being introduced, whether they're AI or not, we propose these kind of three kind of rules of thumb that people could think about. So first of all, would a human or a skilled or trained human usually be needed to carry out the task that the technology was kind of replacing or doing? Would the correct response or decision specified in advance? So was it basically a simple kind of program, or was it a more complex kind of application based on predictions and the use of more complex sources of data? And lastly, can the system make decisions or execute commands more or less autonomy? So in other words, with little to no human intervention. And if it can, then the chances are it's likely to be an AI-based system. So one of the things we also wanted to point out in the introduction to the handbook is that, you know, we wanted to highlight that when we talk about artificial intelligence, that in many kind of senses, it's neither artificial nor intelligence. So what we mean by that is it's not artificial in the sense that it's not entirely synthetic. All artificial intelligence systems need a lot of human intelligence or people in order to develop the training data, to label training data, or to train the AI in some kind of way. And it's not intelligent in the sense that it doesn't understand the inputs that it's given. It basically produces or tries to predict the right kind of output based on the inputs that it's receiving. So it doesn't understand things in the same way as human intelligence understands things. And then thirdly, why are these kind of technologies increasingly attractive to retailers? So firstly, retail is a sector which is in many areas of retail has quite sort of low profit margins. And it's a sector which has had relatively slow productivity growth over the years and relatively slow to adopt technologies, and AI is potentially seen as a kind of something that you can take off the shelf more or less and is a quick fix to this kind of this general pattern. And also there's a sense of a fear of being left behind. So there's a lot of hype about AI that's being pushed by AI kind of providers about this sort of potential that AI has, and some retailers sort of feel like they need to get in sort of early in order to kind of make the most out of what potential AI might have in the future. So the research that we did was involved desk-based review of what kinds of AI technologies are being used in the retail sector. So we looked at the academic and trade literature on what kinds of technologies were being used. We also looked at provider websites to get an understanding of how these systems worked and what kinds of data they used. And we also carried out interviews with union representatives and industry experts in the sector from about 10 different countries. So we spoke to people in Germany, Belgium, Netherlands, Switzerland, Sweden, Italy, Slovenia, Iceland, the UK, and the US. So kind of quite a broad scope to try and get people's understandings about what kinds of technologies their members or they were aware of happening. And we identified 13 different specific applications of types or types of uses of AI technologies in retail. So you can see them listed here under the applications column. And these can be broadly kind of grouped together in these kind of 5 main categories. So I'll say a little bit more about worker management and HR uses in a second. But this included things like, so in the supply chain and logistics, some of the technologies ranged from things like automated ordering and replenishment systems, so systems that might use cameras or data from point of sales and then external data about trends, etc., in order to predict what products what needed replenishing and sort of plan inventory. It also included things like robotic warehousing, so from kind of fully automated warehouses to sort of partially automated warehouses. So customer monitoring and personalization systems included systems that might use like cameras or Wi-Fi beacons to create heat maps about kind of busy areas of stores. This could be used for merchandising, or it could be used for to push notifications to customers in store about what kind of offers might be on, or in some cases to feed into screens to tell people what kinds of products they might be interested in. So store and customer service automation. So this included things like staffless stores, like the Amazon Go kind of stores that were on the first sort of slide I showed you, to other things like customer service chatbots, which might range in sophistication from sort of simple kind of tree decision-making systems to more complex systems that use natural language processing, and try to create a more sort of conversational style. So the last kind of category was security and loss prevention systems. So this ranged from systems that used cameras in store, various different kinds of sensors to detect theft or suspicious behavior of customers. Systems that are used to identify security risks. So, for example, facial recognition systems to identify people if they've been, flagged as being a security risk. And even systems that were focused more on the employees, that are aimed at monitoring employees and trying to identify the kind of suspicious or fraudulent behavior. So obviously, all of these kinds of technologies have quite a lot of implications for how staff interact with customers, if they're having to more often confront customers about potential theft, that kind of thing, but also how employees kind of how their relationship is with the employer itself. So I wanted to say a little bit more, go into a little bit more detail about one of these 5 areas, and that is worker management and HR kind of uses. So 3 main kinds of applications that you have in this category include work staff and staff planning and scheduling. So these are systems that use internal and external data to try and predict staffing needs, either on a longer term basis. So changing like when you might need more staff at sort of busy periods. But also on a sort of more short-term basis. So one of these systems is Percolata that you can sort of see on the screen here. This uses data from kind of internal data from historical sales, etc. But it also uses external data from things like local traffic, data from weather, etc., to predict more short-term staff needs. So this could, automate sort of scheduling, which would obviously expose workers to kind of flexible work practices. So task allocation and rewards. So that ranges from things like that you see in Q-commerce and the platform sector. So in one of the images there on the screen is a Bolt micro fulfillment center. So there's technologies that direct people around the fulfillment center to pick and pack orders. But these systems are also increasingly being used in bricks and mortar retail stores to direct staff to busier areas of the store, or to enable them to fulfill click and collect orders. So the last kind of category in this is group things like automated and self-service HR. So this includes things like automated hiring systems. So for example, Jackie and I worked on a project for Walmart where they were introducing an automated hiring system to try and stream the hiring process. But it also includes things like automated onboarding systems that try to tailor training, for example, based on the employee's sort of previous experience and that kind of thing. And so all of these kind of uses present kind of quite a wide range of risks and opportunities. So the main kinds of opportunities that come out of some of these uses are a reduction in kind of routine and mundane kind of tasks, potential upskilling and potential opportunity to negotiate kind of new roles for workers. But some of the most kind of pressing risks basically related to things like reduced demand in aggregate from the automation of certain tasks or parts of work in the sector, increased flexibilization through things like automated scheduling, that kind of thing, increased monitoring and collecting of data, reduced autonomy from systems that kind of allocate tasks or direct them around. and question marks about transparency about how these kind of systems work, what data is collected, and how that data might be used or misused. And we describe each of these technologies in a little bit more detail in the handbook, along with sort of trying to identify the individual opportunities and risks that rise from these. And there's a kind of summary table as well in the appendix to try and sort of help guide union kind of representatives. And so that's a little bit about the kinds of technologies and what some of the risks and opportunities were. And I'm just going to pass over to Steve now.
Thanks very much, Will. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. I'm going to talk a bit about the second part of the report, which looks essentially at what unions are doing in the retail space about the question of AI, and also tries to synthesize some lessons from that to develop best practice for what unions might do in the future. So to start almost at the end, in terms of how we lay things out in the report, just first of all present a sort of schematic roadmap for collective bargaining over AI for retail sector workers and unions. And we think there are 5 key steps. These could be amended a bit depending on context and so on, but broadly speaking, from looking at existing collective bargaining agreements and speaking to unions, we think these are 5 key steps on the path to bargaining over AI technology. So first of all, would be to establish the principle of transparency within the workplace. So that means the union getting around the table with management to systematically examine what AI tools are already in use in the workplace. And this could lead potentially to surprising outcomes, because it's not always the case that senior levels of management at least are aware of the various AI use cases being used, maybe at lower levels of an organization. We hear a bit nowadays about things like ambient AI. So we find, many of us have probably found Copilot being bundled in with our emails without anyone asking us whether we wanted that and so on. And we find various kinds of sort of creeping AI use cases in the retail sector too. So I think a first step has to be transparency and full disclosure about what's actually being used and an accounting of that. And that helps with this point that we have a quote from above here from the Verdi Union in Germany. And this is a union organizer trying to explain that members have to understand really what AI is, maybe not so much in the abstract, but in concrete terms, in terms of the use cases that actually exist in the workplace. And if people are clear about what it is and how it affects them and their workflow, then they can more understand why it's important to have a collective bargaining agreement over it. So that's step 1. 2 is to establish some core principles around the use of AI in the workplace. We lay out these in some detail in the report. I won't run through them in detail, but they surround things like non-discrimination, that they shouldn't be used to automate labor, that they shouldn't be used to pit workers competitively against one another by monitoring their output and productivity. They shouldn't lead to discriminatory outcomes, and a few other key principles that we think unions have to be firm on before they enter into bargaining over these systems. If you know what your principles are, then it's easier to go to management and ask for something to bargain over. Third, then, once a management decides to go and acquire an AI technology, there should be onus placed upon them by the union to clearly establish the need for buying an AI tool or for implementing it. So why exactly are we getting this tool? Asking, the hard questions about what kind of impact is this going to have on people's workflows? What kind of impact is it going to have on the quality of work, upon workers' skills, and so on? So putting pressure on management to establish a clear rationale for the adoption of any given technology. If you pass that threshold, then the next one would be that there's an expectation that workers or representatives are systematically involved in either the purchase, if you're buying something off the shelf, or in the design of any given technology, if you're building it in-house. So rather than building or buying something and then implementing it and then asking later on what workers think about that, it should be embedding a worker voice and input into the process from the very beginning, if there is going to be digitalization and the implementation of AI. And then finally, it would be understanding AI not as something that's just a one-off process of implementation, but as a tool that's live and that will continue probably to impact people's workflows down the line, but also will require continuous updating and probably will go through transformations as it hits the ground, like any tool does. Nothing exists in the abstract. It becomes embedded in the real world, and it will change and develop. And therefore, there should be an expectation that unions have an ongoing dialogue with management, that management are open to adjusting, open to feedback and adjusting the functioning of technologies, or even withdrawing them based upon worker feedback if they're not working as expected. So you might think this is really ambitious, and this is a long way from where most unions are at in terms of bargaining over AI. But I think if you start with a framework of where you'd like to be, then it can help orient you towards that as you take smaller steps in the here and now. So we don't want to, let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And we start to stake out in the report some actually existing examples of bargaining over AI, which maybe don't completely match the framework we lay out here, but could be seen as steps towards it. So if we can go to the next slide, please, Will. So we see good examples of unions leveraging their existing rights and workplace bargaining agreements, whether these are pre-existing occupational health and safety standards to report concerns or risks around AI, be it over work intensification, privacy, mental health, and so on. The use of AI assessments as an extension of risk assessments, essentially, to look at what kinds of impacts you could actually expect an AI tool to have if it's rolled out. We see examples also of litigation to test existing workplace legislation around health and safety and other bits of employment law that could be used in this case. And then finally, we also see the extension and the co-option of existing collective bargaining agreements. And we spoke with members of the Handels union in Sweden, who bargain a lot over AI, but they don't use new agreements to do this. They use their existing workplace bargaining agreements and frameworks to discuss new technology introduction. Next slide, please. But for those workers who don't feel able to use existing frameworks and so on, then we also look at examples whereby new agreements are struck. And we look in some detail in the report at the agreement between the Verdi union in Germany and H&M, the clothing retailer. And they struck a framework agreement over AI and digitalization in 2022 with some really interesting provisions. First of all, safeguards against dismissal or de-skilling or demotion as an effect of the introduction of AI. Restrictions, harder restrictions than before on the use of temporary hires to replace permanent staff. Bonuses to replace any lost commissions as a result of the introduction of AI to make sure that workers are bought in materially to the implementation of a new system. And then lots of the things I was discussing about before in terms of co-design of technology, pilot workshops where you get around a table with shop floor workers, union reps, and managers to help actually design and test sandboxed versions of technology before it's implemented on the shop floor. And then finally, ongoing oversight. So, biannual reviews of all the new technologies that are introduced, and also a dedicated board, a digitalization board, to ensure that worker influence is maintained post-implementation. Now, this isn't necessarily perfect, and we did hear some complaints about some limited resources, but nevertheless, I think it points in the direction of how unions can begin to seriously leverage their existing position to strike new agreements and to begin to bargain over AI in a real way. Next slide, please. Some other examples we came across, which are quite instructive, is the case of worker involvement. So this comes from a packaging cooperative agreement in Italy. And there are some really interesting, I think it was signed in 2019 from memory, and there are some really interesting provisions around worker involvement in AI and digital tech use. So some core principles, as I suggested before, that humans have to retain ultimate control over the system, and nothing should be ultimately delegated to a machine to decide. That the data inputs into the system should be reliable and verifiable. and obviously there's leeway to bargain over exactly what these things mean. And that workers should be recognized as users of AI in their roles, and this should be a, kind of acknowledged part of their skill set if they're expected to interact with these technologies. There's also an expectation that firms disclose the kinds of tech that's being used to workers, the impact on production processes, and on exactly what kind of data is being collected, retained, and why, to try to push for transparent and participatory kind of worker-focused innovation. So that's one more example. Next slide, please. And then we look at also at a Swisscom agreement with its union from 2018. And there they have a lot of provisions around data. So systems can only collect anonymized data, nothing that identifies who you are as a worker. So that already puts strict limits on the kind of KPI monitoring and sort of invidious competition between workers that some workplaces use AI for. That data is processed legally and legitimately, that there's no monitoring of employees, and there's no use of AI for productivity targets. That all adoption is transparent and communicated transparently over by management, and that agreement to use this tech is voluntary and also critically time limited. So you don't sign away your rights forever when you agree to use the system, but there are limits on that, whatever it may be, 6 months or a year or so. So management have to continually come back to unions and workers and ask for renewed consent and explain why they need it and how these tools will be used going forwards. Next slide, please. And then from a few other agreements, we also look at the right to disconnect, and AI intensifies already existing always on kind of workplace cultures. And so we find some agreements from Spain and also from Italy, which really focus quite strongly on the question of enforcing a work-life separation through various actually positive uses of technology. So things like delayed email deliveries, messaging apps that can't contact you outside of working hours, and so on. Next slide, please. And in the final bit of the report, we look at the adoption of AI by unions themselves. And we have, colleagues from the union movement here. So I maybe won't say too much about this, but we do find challenges still in terms of the ability of unions to adopt some of these tools, both in terms of their own internal skill sets, but also the supplier options out there. How reliant do unions want to be on tools that are provided by big tech, which they know from their own workplace experience can produce sort of discriminatory or other kinds of negative outputs. So there's something of a puzzle there, and it would be good to hear from the other panelists about this. But on to the last slide I'll talk about, which is the impact of all these negotiations. It's clear there's a lot of work to do. So we find even in very well covered and organized workplaces and sectors, so Switzerland, for example, we find that there's anxiety amongst workers and unions as well to criticize AI. There's a sense that it knows better than us, and who are we to criticize this new technology that's come out of Silicon Valley and it's going to transform our workplace. So there's a lot of anxiety around expertise and understanding of AI, which I think needs to be tackled. We also find that there's just resistance, pretty strong resistance. Again, Belgium are relatively well unionized and high degree of bargaining coverage. But even there, you find a resistance from employers to negotiate over AI, and that the idea that this is a managerial prerogative and this isn't something that workers should be involved in or have any input over. In the UK, we also find somebody from the GMB telling us that our employers say they've done an AI impact assessment, but they won't actually share the results of it. So a reluctance to share information or to have participatory involvement from management, but also some signs of hope too. And I think lots of the agreements that we found, we were quite surprised to see were struck several years ago now. So there's already precedent in some places for bargaining over these things, and I hope our handbook offers a small contribution to helping unions orient themselves around this new technology, to not be overly intimidated by some of the hype and the claims around it, and to start organizing to make sure that workplaces aren't transformed in an overly negative way by AI, but instead it's seen as something more of an opportunity for workers to be more involved in what work looks like and to make work better. So over to the panelists. I think it would be great to hear what they have to say. Thanks very much.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Will and Steve, for a really excellent presentation, basically looking at what have we got, how are we using it, and how is it working? I think they're really helpful questions to help trade unions negotiate there. I'd like to hand over now to our discussants before I open it up to the rest of the participants here on the Zoom call. And first of all, I'd like to introduce Espen Strandhus. Sorry if that's a bad pronunciation of my poor Norwegian. Espen is Senior Advisor at Hake Norway, which is the retail and trade union in Norway. And he's going to talk to us about his reaction to this report and the Norwegian perspective on it. So fire ahead, Espen. And then I'll go to Nikoletta and to Nick. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jacqueline. Yeah, as Jacqueline said, my name is Espen Strandhus, Senior Advisor at HK Norway. We are one of the country's largest trade unions and the biggest within the retail sector. Our members work across a wide range of industries, but many of them are directly affected by the rapid digitalization and automation that are transforming commerce today. And this is why the topic of AI in retail is not just relevant for us, it is essential. The handbook provides a clear and practical overview of how AI is being used in retail, from recruitment and shift planning to performance management and surveillance. It also points to the risk that algorithmic bias, loss of autonomy, and weakened collective influence. And I think that these are not just abstract issues. They are shaping the reality of workplaces as we speak. And one of the biggest challenges we face, and the handbook capture this as well, is that AI systems are often introduced without real dialogue. They arrive as part of digital transformation, as part of a strategy, but workers and their representatives are rarely involved early enough. And I think that this creates uncertainty and mistrust, and people are left wondering what data is being collected, how decisions are made, and whether there is any way to challenge unfair outcomes. The handbook also makes an important point that AI is not neutral. Algorithms are built by people, trained on historical data, and reflects the values and priorities of those who deploy them. And if we do not ask critical questions, we risk building systems that reproducing old inequalities in new digital forms. I think that transparency and human oversights are essential, and unions have a key role to play in securing both. Norway is often highlighted as a country with a strong labor model. It's true that we have robust laws, collective agreements, and institutions for cooperation between unions, employers, and the state. The Norwegian model is built on trust, dialogue, and the belief that change should be a teamwork and not just imposed. But even in Norway, we face serious challenges. Having laws and agreements is not enough if they are not actively used. We see cases where employers introduce digital tools without proper consultation, and where local union representatives do not always exercise the rights they have. Sometimes it's due to lack of knowledge, sometimes capacity, and sometimes because the pace of technological change simply moves faster than our structures can follow. The result is that technology is implemented without the critical questions being asked early enough. This shows that the Norwegian model is not self-sustaining. It depends on active participation and a culture of cooperation. Rights that are not used are rights that can quietly disappear. Therefore, one of our most important tasks as a union is to ensure that our representatives have the competence and confidence to engage with these issues, to understand how algorithm works, to ask for documentation, and to insist on real dialogue. I think the handbook uses a phrase, negotiating the algorithm. I think it captures exactly what this is about. The future of work is not a technical problem, it's a social negotiation about power, control, and fairness. Who designs the system? Who monitors their effects, and who gets to decide when something goes wrong? I think these are deeply political questions, and they must be answered through collective voices and democratic governance at work. In Norway, this negotiation happens at several levels, national level and sectoral agreements, workplace cooperation. When it works, it allows us to shape technology in ways that support both productivity and job quality. But when it fails, decisions are made without dialogue, and workers are left with systems they do not understand and cannot influence. Myself, I believe that AI can be a tool for better work. It can remove repetitive tasks, improve safety, and make scheduling more predictable. But that can only happen when workers are involved in its design and its use. So when AI is used responsibly, it can strengthen and not weaken trust in the workplace. I think that to achieve that, unions need three things, at least three things. That's competence, cooperation, and courage. Competence to understand how these systems function, and cooperation to work with employers in good faith, and courage to challenge them when the technology undermines dignity or fairness. So ultimately, the question is not whether AI will change work, it already has, but we as a labor movement will and must respond. As we discuss the future of AI in retail, we must ensure that technology serves people and not the other way around. Algorithm may process data, but they cannot replace human judgment, dialogue, and trust. And I think the future of retail work must be built not for workers, but with them. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Espen. So with that rally to competencies, cooperation and courage, can I move on to Nikoletta? Nikoletta is, hold on, let me get this, is the project coordinator at Uni Europe. So thank you very much for your organisation supporting this research and the other projects we've done on Q-Commerce. Nikoletta is originally from the Hungarian Trade Union of Commerce employees. And Nikoletta, let's hand over to you to see what comments you'd like to make on this report. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So as you heard, I work for Uni, which brings together workers from more than 150 countries in the servicing economy. So Uni is an umbrella organization. Our members are trade unions from all over the world, which represent service workers. We are also organized by region, and Europe one of its region, and of course by sectors. And the commerce sector is the biggest when it comes to the servicing economy and when it comes to Uni membership as well. And unfortunately, workers in the commerce sector face a lot of major problems. Low wages, irregular working hours, which means evening shifts, night shifts, Sunday work. They face with involuntary part-time work, and mainly women are affected by this, which is also can be a huge problem. And not to mention the effect of the franchising and the digitalizations. And all these trends make workers more vulnerable and insecure. So let me give you an example. There is a new type of franchising model. In this system, large companies try to expand by turning existing shops and their workers, so existing workers, over to a smaller entrepreneur, so-called franchisee. And in the practice, this often means that although the workers work under the same logo and wear the same uniform, their pay and conditions become worse than in the parent company. And we saw this here in Belgium. In the case of Deleuze, the company decided to franchise all its shops in Belgium, which means that more than 9,000 workers lost their rights ensured by the sectoral collective agreement, and they lost their trade union memberships because of the Belgian law. So as you can see, we have major problems, and what Europa can do about it. First and foremost, we, with the help of European funded projects, we are mapping these situations, raising awareness among our affiliates and our members, and giving them tools to respond on these challenges, to bring these topics into the negotiation table, because social dialogue is the one and only solution to handle the problem of world of work. And this work is crucial because trade unions not always have enough human and financial resources to concentrate these new trends, but these issues not only harm workers, they also weaken the trade unions, because fewer workers means fewer members, and that means a weaker union movement globally. And in the worst case scenario, this can mean that workers lose their strength and their voice and their influence to world of work. And we saw the same trend when it comes to AI. That's why we applied for this project. And in the frame of this project, we worked together with Steve, Will, and Rachel in order to help trade unions to understand what is AI and how it's being used in the retail sector. Because companies, as you heard, already use AI, but often neither the trade unions nor the workers know what these systems are on or how they affect them. And if you read the handbook, you can see there are a lot of risks, especially when it comes to work intensification, surveillance, or health and safety problems. So it's clear that we need to handle it. So this work has been essential in raising awareness and giving our affiliate practical tool how they can handle and negotiate on AI. And we also use this handbook to design a training. We concluded 4 training sessions in Hungary, France, Spain, and Sweden. These trainings follow the structure of the handbook. So first we investigated with the participants what is AI and how it's being used in the commerce sector. And after, in the frame of working group activities, participants identified the opportunities and the risks of the individual usage. And after, based on the handbook's findings, we got them feedbacks on their reflections. And after this, the participants worked together on their own trade union strategies, which were more or less in line with the findings of the handbook. So first, trade unions need to increase their knowledge. After, they need to raise awareness. And during this process, they must to increase their membership. So they must to organize new members, because this ensures the strength at the negotiation table. And last but not least, which is the main goal, is the workers have to have a voice before the implementation of these AI systems, and during they have to have a right to monitor its operation. After this for training, we also get a request from company Inditex to conclude a training for the members of European Works Council on AI, and it was very useful and eye-opening for the European Works Council members as well. And of course, we won't stop here. We will continue this work. Our goal is to make as much training as possible to our affiliates to spread the knowledge and the tools, and probably we will find alternative resources to hold a training for trainers, which can ensure the multiplicator effect. So these trainers will be able to go their own country and train their own members and own trade union officers. What is AI, how it's used, and how the trade union should react on it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Nikoletta, and thank you very much for coming together to help collaborate with our team, because I think the team really benefited from the access you had to unions right across Europe and North America. That was a massive benefit for us, and that the fact you wanted to do this, and then you could build on the skills that Steve and Will and Rachel had in doing other pieces of research in the retail sector. So it's been a really lovely collaboration, and it's great to see that something very accessible has been coming out of it that people will actually use. I mean, that's otherwise, what's the point of doing this? We're not ivory tower researchers. Now, let's come back to, after our European whirlwind tour, to Nick Scott. Nick is at Unions 21, and he is the director and part of the Centre for Responsible AI. And in his spare time, of which he may not have much, he also helped advise us on the art competition we had over the summer to look at better images of AI. So on one hand, this might seem frivolous, but it's not, I think, because it's about how can we imagine a different set of relationships that are not the stereotypes or tropes. And I think with this piece of work, you know, you're trying to say, let's imagine what the good could look like. So Nick, over to you. What do you think of the report?
Thank you. So, I mean, I think it's really important to have reports like this happening and more conversation happening about unions and AI. So, as you said, I come from Unions 21, which is a non-profit focused on trade union innovation and change and modernization. We set up the Centre for Responsible Union AI, and that's focused on how unions as organizations can build internal capacity to respond strategically to AI for their own organization. So it's the handbook does a kind of a really good job at focusing on what unions should bargain for regarding AI, should be bargaining about regarding AI in retail workplaces. I want to focus today on a kind of maybe a prior question. What would have to be true for unions to be at their strongest in understanding and responding to AI? And my sense of that challenge is that a union that doesn't understand AI internally will struggle to negotiate it externally. You can't really demand ethical and responsible AI adoption if you haven't adopted AI ethically yourself, if you haven't even looked at what it would look like for yourself. Unions need to not just they need to go through some form of AI transformation of their own in some way. They need to live some of the experience in some way, because lots of AI use is happening within unions, and actually you could reflect a lot of the points you've made about employers back onto unions and see the same patterns happening within unions themselves. I like to look at it, because of my background's in digital transformation, I like to look at it from 4 kind of key dimensions. The first one being people. So when the handbook looked at unions and how unions have capacity around AI, they identified skills gap, and that's definitely true. This year, we've run a survey of union staff. We've had over 300 union staff from around the world respond. 2/3 of them have never had any AI training, yet 3/4 of them are experimenting with AI regularly. That's worrying for a technology that's, I mean, that primarily this is generative AI, should be clear. There is a difference there. But that it's frankly worrying for a technology that's weird, unreliable, and ethically quite problematic. But the more I run training, the more I see it's not actually, the problem is not actually about skills. It feels like it's more about professional identity. And this is where the discourse, so I come from the discourse of digital transformation. This is where I think it differs from digital. When I run digital webinars for the unions, a handful of digital people turn up, digital communicators, digital organizers, maybe some IT people, they come along. If I run an AI webinar, I get hundreds of people, and they're from union finance, union HR, union ops, everyone shows up from every team. What's the difference here? Maybe they've heard that AI won't take your job, but someone using AI will trope that goes around. Digital transformation was about organizations. When you talked about Kodak and Blockbuster going, and what happened to Kodak and Blockbuster. AI is about Kenny and Brenda, the individuals and their jobs, their lives, their future. So union staff at an individual level, union staff face a unique tension. How can you navigate an identity shift about your work while you're helping members navigate those same fears and those same challenges? How do you organize for workers' protection from an AI if you're also trying to experiment with it internally? It's a really uncomfortable situation to be in. I think what unions need in terms of people is they need to guide staff away from extremes. The final question of the survey is, what would you wish for AI in a year? The most popular answer, it's a free text field, so people answer whatever they want, but the one answer comes back time and time again. I wish it would go away. Now, union staff might wish that, but it's not going to happen. We need to move people away from extremes and drive pragmatic engagement with what AI is and where it can be used and where we should not be using it. We also need to reassure staff that their judgment, their empathy, the institutional knowledge they have, that's irreplaceable. And those messages need to be sent just as we'd expect employers to send those messages. Union leadership need to send those messages too. We need to move learning from a one-off event. So many people don't even have the one-off events, but even so, learning needs to be not a one-off event. It needs to be a continuous rhythm of learning because AI moves rapidly. And we need to create safety for experimentation, psychological safety. Those are the things that people really miss at the people level. The second area is process. 33% of union respondents weren't sure if their union had an AI policy. 28% were sure it didn't have an AI policy. How can we be asking employers to have AI policies when 2/3 of unions don't have an AI policy for themselves, or 2/3 of people in unions say they don't have an AI policy? Maybe they do, and it's just never been communicated. There's a unique challenge in terms of processes for unions, which is, or not unique, but there is a challenge. Collective decision-making cultures, which is what unions have, aren't exactly the best place for fast adoption. So if you want to engage with something, you don't have that kind of culture. And the technology is moving fast, and it's not even like you can ignore it because it's being added to people's computer, to the search engine, to their word processing apps. It's there, and they just see it from one day to another appear. It's the ambient AI that was discussed earlier. But if our goal is responsible adoption rather than fast adoption, actually, unions know what is required. It's exactly the same things as we would require of our employers. Transparency, accountability, non-discrimination, worker participation, the same things as are in that survey, in the handbook, sorry. The democratic structures don't need to slow things down. They can be unions building the safeguards that companies skip and doing it well. So how can unions improve their process? I think we need to move from if to how. Unions need to agree that engaging with AI and adopting AI responsibly in some way is a worthwhile goal to look at. Accept that AI is here and that some members of staff are using it, and don't get stuck in debating about whether we'll engage. Make progress on doing it well and doing it safely and responsibly. Have governance that enables, not restricts. Create forums to learn across teams, redesign workflows, take advantage when you can to eliminate entire steps of our workflows that are not helping us to be the kind of agile organizations we'd like to be for our members. I think the FNV's AI lab is a really interesting example, and it's used in the report. The third dimension is technology and data. Here there's two big problems. First is the governance of IT. The old model where you have an IT that controls all technology decisions, that basically doesn't work anymore. AI tools are everywhere and they've been made available everywhere. I've had some union people telling me, oh, Copilot just appeared overnight because IT said it was okay. IT accepted that. And other people saying, I have no idea when I'll get a Copilot license because we have no conversation about it. In fact, I've only ever talked to one union that's having a serious conversation about who gets Copilot Pro licenses. Now, we don't need to have the answers, but we should be having the discussions because it's there and people are frustrated right now. And so governance is one thing. The other is data. One survey respondent described this is brilliant, described their CRM as a mountain of information that's neither use nor ornament, which is a very colloquial saying that means it's useless. Basically, I can't access it. AI is fundamentally a data tool, and unions collect incredible data, or have the ability to do so, but it's rarely structured and accessible for people. So the handbook talks about the access side. It says the informing capacity of data does not necessarily belong exclusively to management. It could belong to the unions too. It could belong to union staff at all levels, but they need to have a way to interrogate data, to access data, to see the data. And at the moment, in too many unions, that's just not possible. Data is inaccessible and not well structured for them. So we need clear decision-making on AI tools, a kind of more portfolio approach, a more open approach to how we look at AI tools, sandbox environments so that people can play safely with tools without touching dangerous data or putting danger in their data. And we need an honest audit. We need investment in data and making data AI ready so that we can take advantages of data when we have it. And the final thing is the route to impact. We need to be tracking how the external world is changing as a result of AI, and how will unions have to respond. There are already signs here of what awaits unions. Unions are already seeing massive drops to their websites through Google AI overviews. People are not clicking through to their website because Google AI overviews is giving them the answer. Has any union that I haven't heard of one union that's actually investigated how many members are already getting answers to the same questions we used to answer, but they're getting it from ChatGPT now? There will be a lot of members that are doing it. And we need unions to be asking that question because we need to understand the scale of the challenge that awaits us. We're also seeing new startups, same as happened with digital, offering services that feel a lot like a union, but without the solidarity bit. But using AI now. So we need to be tracking where members are on AI and how they're responding, where reps are on AI. We need to monitor how employers use AI, not just in terms of workers, but also in their interaction with unions. I'm sure employers are using it as negotiation prep tools, and I don't know any union that's doing that. We need to consider opportunities to do things that were previously impossible. Can we do training at scale? Can we do mass listening exercises at scale? What are the things that we can take away from this while the other side is taking their value? And crucially, we need to do it all in a way that aligns with our values so that people don't turn around and go, you're not living your values. So I asked at the beginning, what would have to be true? I think for unions to be their strongest at understanding, responding to AI, there's 4 things that would have to be true. Firstly, unions, their staff and reps would have to be building their AI capabilities at speed. They'd have to be understanding it much faster than they are currently. Secondly, unions, their staff and reps would have permission to experiment in safe environments as part of the way they learn. At the moment, a lot of them don't have permission to even look at it. Thirdly, unions would see and invest in data as a really strategic asset, and I don't think they all do that enough. And fourthly, unions would have processes in place that kind of drive the organizational engagement with AI. They'd be thinking about that workflow and taking the opportunity. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Nick, as well. Very inspiring of all the things yet to be done. If you would like to ask a question to the panel or to any of the speakers, please either put your hand up and turn your camera on and I'll call you to ask it yourself, or if you prefer, we can post it in the chat and I'll pick it up from there. So, feel free to do that. And I know there's a lot of people in the audience here, I know, who are working in issues in different capacities around some of these topics of how AI transparency is happening at work and who controls what kinds of data. So is anybody first of all Andreas, would you like to turn your speaker on and introduce yourself and ask a question?
Yes, hello everyone. Thank you, Jackie. I hope you hear me well. So thank you for this fantastic panel, wonderful presentations, and very insightful also interventions from the trade union, our trade union friends. So I, I'm not sure if I would have enough time, but I think I have three comments slash questions, and you know, if there is time, we can discuss them. So very quickly for Will, the first one, I thought the phrase that AI is neither intelligent nor artificial. I thought that was really catchy, really good. I guess my comment to that is that we need to qualify what we mean by intelligent. And you know, it's a I'm a sociologist, and you know, concepts are important and clarity and everything. So maybe what you're talking about is AI is not conscious. So it's the principle of conscience or sapience, but definitely it is more intelligent than you know MS Word or Excel and so on. For Steve, I guess my question is, what about works councils? So usually works councils have those rights, especially in countries like Germany, to be involved early on in the decision making as part of their board representation. Do you see that they have more power to shape and those technologies? And yeah, final point for the other panelists is, what do we mean by understanding AI? Because in many cases, I think the managers who adopt AI do not really understand the technicalities of AI. They're only interested in the outputs or the consequences, the implications, the cost cutting, essentially. So do we really need to understand AI deeply, or we need to understand its consequences, either bad or good? And I stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andreas. I think there's some hearty questions there. And I think that last question on, do actually managers know what their staff are using? I think the financial crisis in 2008 indicated that, because the bosses didn't actually know what the young bright things were actually doing on those computers. And if you missed it, I'm sure there's a film you could watch that will fill you in. Let's hand over to Steve and Will, and first of all, to answer those particular questions. Anybody else, put your hands up or write it in the chat, and then I'll come back to the panel in a minute. Right, Steve and Will, do you want to answer back for those?
Yeah, yeah, thanks. So I'll go first if that's okay, Steve. Answer the first question. But thanks, Andreas, for the question. And yeah, it's a good point that you make. I think really we just wanted to make the point that, you know, that there's a lot of human intelligence involved in developing these technology, that it's not just a thing that comes down magically from sort of from like a piece of software, or like or just designed by a sort of small number of developers who create this sentient thinking being and unleash it on the world. So I think that's the main point. And yes, you're right. In terms of when we say it's not really intelligent in the same way as we're intelligent, it's you are right. It's kind of really, it's not conscious of what it's doing. It's not sentient in the sense that it has the same kinds of motivations and drivers, and kind of it is responding to inputs in a way that, and you could argue there could be philosophical debates about whether humans are kind of like computers that just respond to outputs, but I tend to sort of believe that we're not, you know, being sort of a sociologist as well. But yeah, you're right. It really, we wanted to make this kind of point that it relies on a whole army really of human intelligence to kind of make it work effectively. And now I'll hand over to you, Steve, for the second question there.
Yeah, I mean, just briefly, I obviously agree. There's wide divergences in national, you know, traditions of bargaining, and you know, there's not only at a national scale but also regionally and across sectors too. So the starting point is obviously going to be quite different for places with existing frameworks that can can be mobilized, like in some Nordic countries that don't really need repurposing, to be able to already cover AI topics, to places like the UK where there's extremely limited bargaining coverage. But I think a broader point, just to connect to this question of what AI is, or how we should think about it, and the question of expertise, and I think some of the other panelists will come onto this as well. But I mean, for me, I think there is AI is kind of a unique opportunity insofar as I think that there's much more scope for social partnership over this particular technology than there is over lots of other issues. I'm sometimes a little skeptical of social partnership because I think it can paper over some fundamental divergent interests between managers and workers. But I think in this case, it's really true that many, if not most managers who adopt AI have very little idea of what it is, how it works, who made it, what it's supposed to even do. The gap in knowledge is absolutely vast. And so I think there's a real strong case here for workers who actually do these jobs and know what the tech should be doing and know the gap between the reality and the hype around it, to step in and say, this isn't working, this isn't worth buying, it doesn't make any sense, and there's real scope for workplace involvement. So I think that cuts across different bargaining and other kinds of national arrangements. And I think that's a universal of this technology, just because of the nature of where it's come from, the extreme, hyper financialized nature of the Silicon Valley that's produced this tech and is trying to sort of shove it upon all of us for financial gain at the moment and to avoid the bursting of the bubble. So yeah, just I think that there is real scope for workers adopting firms to collaborate on figuring out actually what's useful here and what's not, and what do we really want to avoid, more so than I would say in many other cases where a divergence of interest might be a bit sharper. But keen to hear what the others think.
Yeah, is anybody in the panel discussants, would you have anything you'd like to add? You don't have to, but if you want to.
So I don't know if the final question about kind of understanding AI was a little bit, for me, I wasn't quite sure, but if it was, then what do I mean by understanding AI from the union side? I mean, so, to be honest, frankly, any step up would be good. Like, I think the challenge is that you have people that are not do not understand the basics of how it works, not at a really basic level, do not understand the basics of how it works, do not understand the risks of it, and do not understand the promise of it. And if you don't have those three things, how can you even start to engage with it? And I specifically focus, and Unit 21 specifically focuses on the internal side, and most of the focus right now is on generative AI, because that's the thing that's being just used and made available. And there's a few kind of bright sparks that are running away, and then a lot of people who, when I asked the question of what percent, where would you place yourself in terms of your AI use, standstill is a really, really high number of people, and a lot of those people are managers of other people who are running with it, and that's a challenge. We need people from the leadership down to understand it, and not to understand that it's not just something you can use once, think it didn't work very well, and then dismiss out of hand and never and think you don't have to come back to it. That's the challenge, actually, is people need to think there must be something here. They need the curiosity to want to think, I need to understand why this might be of interest a little bit.
Cool.
My point, just let me give some comments. So I'm really happy that you spoke about Works Council, because they are very important. They have the right to ask information and consultation about these kind of topics. And I believe that the best, if the Works Council and the trade union is the same. I also believe that if not the same, they can work together. And I also believe that the best place for this work is the European Works Councils, because companies implemented these kind of new technologies in globally. So I think we have to collaborate with them. And here at Uni, we also support European Works Council's operations. So we have tools and contact to support them. Thank you so much.
And Espen, if you want to have a last word before I move on to some more questions.
Yes, thank you. I think about the AI, understanding AI. You can never be an expert. It's of course you can be an expert, but as a union representative, it's not needed to be an expert. I think it's important to understand something about how the algorithm is working. For example, if you are have an AI-based scheduling system, if the system is unfair or biased, you need to know what kind of data is you need to ask the right questions about what data is the system using, and who is making these decisions. I think we cannot raise the bar as you need to be an expert, but as it was said, you have to be curious, and you need to raise the right questions and be able to raise the right questions. Thank you.
Good, thanks very much, Espen. Okay, I'm going to ask Amani and Valeria to ask their questions now briefly. But before I allow you to ask them, there's a question from Hong in the chat. And the question was basically, are you seeing any large place destruction or reduction of jobs in the retail sector? Right, and I'll put that on the table for you to answer. Amani, I think you've got your screen first, and then Valeria.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you very much for the presentation of this important report, and thanks to Nick as well for saying that we need to avoid extremes. And that was a relief to me, that we truly need to avoid extremes when it comes to AI. And I fully agree with you that we need to have also a positive perspective to look at the benefits. You raised an important question about who would access AI in the workplace. And I think that this is now an important thing, and it is about equality, and it's about productivity and capacity of people. And I see in organizations, because AI is expensive, AI systems are really expensive. So not everyone would have access to these expensive systems, which means that some people would have their productivity escalating, and while other people are working the old way. So how do you see this, how we can equalize the workspace or the workplace from that perspective, to give people access to AI when they need it? I think you are muted, Jackie.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I'll say it again. Can I also ask Valeria, would you like to ask your question so I can collect those and then we can have the panel feedback? Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Jackie, and thank you very much to all. It's a very interesting conversation and fantastic report, so I'm really looking forward to read all these. I have a question for Steve. Steve, when you mentioned about the Swedish, you said that they include negotiation in existing agreements. Could you say a bit more about that in the terms of, well, how do they do this? So what is there again a specificity of the Nordic vis-a-vis other kind of industrial relation system and models of collective bargaining, which makes a difference here? So how does it work? What are the kind of topic? What is basically then negotiated specifically? And I have also another question for Nick, because I find it quite provocative and interesting when you said trade unions and data. If you could go a bit more explicitly about that, what are you referring to exactly? So what kind of data trade unions are or need to be engaged in collecting or using in one way or another. So probably I missed it in the intervention you made, but if you could go a bit more in details on that. Thank you very much.
And I'll just thank you very much, Valeria. And I'll just chuck one more question in, as if you haven't had enough. How has your union used AI to help you? Because all of you in different ways have said we have limited resources and limited labour. So are there ways, like as Nick suggested, get your house in order, know how the stuff works? Have you got any examples of ways that your organisation has made use of the digital technologies to the benefit of your members? So it's rather a lot of questions for everybody, but as we've about 10 minutes left or less, I'll hand over to our discussants first, if you'd like to respond to any of those questions, from job displacement to the other ones that are all asked as well. And feel free to jump in, whoever fancies going first, whichever one you want. Espen.
Yes, there was a question about the Nordic model and existing existing agreements or something like that. We in all our agreements in Norway, and I think it's likewise in Sweden also, we have this there's a consultation of technological developments that affect on workplace. So and that's from 1973, I think. So it's old, but it's still modern, if you know what I mean. But the main issue is we need our trade union representatives need to use those agreements and the framework that's already there, and we have to work politically to get better ones. It all depends on how you use what's already there and work for better frameworks. Thank you.
Nick or Nikoletta, would you like to pick up any of the questions mentioned? Nikoletta?
Yes, when it comes to job replacement, of course, we have no evidence, but we have to prepare. And if you think about the job of the cashiers, it's 100% replaceable in the future. And of course, we can see that we still have cashiers, but it is possible that there won't be any in the future. So we must prepare for these consequences as well.
Some of the work Will and I did with Walmart was during the pandemic, like the expectation that robots, automated tills can replace cashiers, which they clearly are doing. We see it when we go shopping. But what we also found alongside that is a massive, in certain areas, increase of employment. It's just in a different part of the chain of how stuff is being sold. So I think it's just trying to measure how that chain of sales is moving from, whether it's from field and factory through the stores and into the dustbins. There's a different sets of employment being created. So that's very interesting. Nick, did you want to say something? You don't have to, but if you would like to address any of the questions.
Yeah, I mean, there was a question addressed about data. I mean, I think, and what kinds of data. I think, honestly, we all know, and it's not. It's kind of it's a cliche, but data is the oil of the modern age, and so on. And there's some truth in it. There are lots of forms of data that unions have access to and could be usefully collecting and making accessible and making it possible to interrogate. And all of those forms of data require some focus on systems, on having systems to collect the data to make those accessible. They also require some focus on building the skills to interrogate, ask the right questions of the data, and so on. And I think on all of those things, there's lots of unions that struggle. The most obvious example is things like a basic membership system. Lots of unions don't have a very strong membership system. Even lots of people cannot easily get an answer on how many members a branch has, or how many, what percentage of our members have left in the last year. All of those things are actually quite difficult for some unions to answer those questions to. So it's the investment in thinking about what data do we need to be an effective organizing union. There's a lot of different answers to that, but it's all of those things. And the kind of AI take right now is one of the things that that AI offers and is a way that AI is making data available to unions. There's quite a lot of unions, the thing that they're doing right now is building for their reps or for their organisers just a way to interrogate collective bargaining agreements, to ask for clauses, to see across those many files where hidden in those files there are bits of information that you need to extract and understand. And those kinds of, that's a really obvious example of the kind of data that if it's in a bunch of PDFs in a folder that you can never find and access, it's not very accessible. Whereas if you can find a way that people can interrogate it when they need it, then and that they can be sure that they can check that the answer is right and all of the other things that you need to do with AI, then actually that opens up a lot of possibilities to people to save time on doing the same thing over and over again, as an example, or just answer the questions in a more with a higher quality of certainty, higher certainty.
Yeah, there's a lot of learning to go. We did a meeting last year with the TUC and the National Education Union, and talking about an app they had developed to help them manage recruiting staff. So if you can message them through this app, your members, is much easier than constantly missing them through in-person attempts to try and catch up with people. So there was quite a lot of excitement about what could be done, why some unions were forward-looking and some other ones weren't so advanced in that. But Will, and I've got a few minutes, got 3 minutes left. Thank you, Will and Steve. I don't think you have anything else left to say, do you? Because we've not much time. Oh, Will, okay, go on.
Just really briefly to try and respond to Amani's question. So the only thing it was about, like, some people being able to use AI and others. But when the sort of things we were looking at, remember a lot of the people who work in retail are like frontline store level staff, people working in warehouses and stuff like that. So they're not necessarily accessing, ChatGPT. Some of them might be to look up information about products. But really, a lot of the things that we were talking about, the workers themselves are kind of like subject to the technology. The technology is either scheduling them or making decisions about them, or guiding them to do certain things, but then all be affected in much the same way, rather than some people being able to use them in one way and not others not being able to use them. But wider, that is a question perhaps, but the sorts of things we're seeing. But there is also the question, though, of some retailers having access to these sort of technologies and being able to benefit from them potentially, and other retailers not really having the skills and resources, especially if they're small retailers, in order to be able to use them. So that was the only thing, just to try and respond to that question.
Steve, I've got 1 minute left. You don't have anything you want to say, do you?
No, all good. Thanks very much, everybody.
Well, can I just thank, especially the funders, Uni Europa, can I thank Espen and Nick for giving your time to reading and commenting on the report? And also just emphasising, well done, Rachel, Will and Steve, for this collaboration, because I think it's really important that it's not just the academic research that's built on earlier work, but this collaboration where we can have a partnership where, with access to your members, we can find out more and spread that knowledge to produce something actually useful and relevant. So can I thank all of you for that, because it's very, very important. And can I thank all of you for coming? It was fantastic. And in the chat, there's some links that people have put in, but also remember the 5th of November on, as they say in the UK, we are having our next Digit debate will be on generative AI and SMEs, in collaboration with work we did with the OECD. And my dear colleague Mark Stewart will be hosting that, because I'm going on holiday. So look forward to seeing those of you who can make it for the 5th of November. And thank you very much again to the panel and the researchers, and to Alex and Gemma and the team helping support this event. All the best. See you soon. Bye now.
Thanks.